Welcome back to Stories Sustain Us, the podcast where we celebrate extraordinary individuals who are making the world a better place, one inspiring story at a time. I'm your host, Stephen Schauer, and today I have the absolute pleasure of introducing someone whose career and personal journey embody the essence of resilience, innovation, and a deep love for our planet. My guest today is Melissa Bryant, whose incredible story takes us from growing up on a cotton farm to becoming one of the leading voices in water resource management and nature-based solutions. Melissa's journey is a testament to the power of hard work, adaptability, and a commitment to making a difference. From switching her college major after transformative internships to leveraging her bilingual skills to open unique career doors, Melissa has embraced every opportunity with passion and purpose. Her current work focuses on improving water resources in underserved communities, integrating social justice into environmental planning, and championing nature-based solutions to address challenges like flooding and water quality. Melissa firmly believes in the economic and ecological benefits of green infrastructure and the necessity of community engagement to drive impactful, lasting change. Melissa Bryant is the Colorado Water Program Manager for Respect Engineering. She holds a BS in Agricultural Engineering from Texas A&M University and an MS in Urban and Regional Planning from the University of Texas at San Antonio. As a licensed professional engineer, certified floodplain manager, and holder of a project management program certification, Melissa brings a wealth of expertise to her work. With over 20 years of experience, including her tenure at the San Antonio River Authority, she now works on stormwater master plans, stream restoration projects, and maximizing opportunities for green infrastructure in Colorado. Melissa also lends her expertise to national organizations like the Water Quality and Environmental Committee for the National Association of Flood and Stormwater Management Agencies. And she serves as the co-chair for ACE 25 with the Rocky Mountain American Waterworks Association. Now, on a personal note, I had the privilege of working with Melissa for over 15 years at the San Antonio River Authority. Her expertise in nature-based solutions for stormwater runoff and water quality was always a source of inspiration for me, and it still is today. And I always jumped at the chance to learn from her wealth of knowledge. So you're in for a real treat today with Melissa's story. Today's episode will dive into Melissa's remarkable story, her upbringing, her career, her insights on collaboration and community engagement, and her vision for a future where hope, unity, and stewardship of our natural resources guide us toward a more sustainable world. So, without further ado, let's welcome Melissa Bryant to Stories Sustain Us, where we are inspiring action through the power of storytelling. Welcome, Melissa. Hi, welcome to Stories Sustain Us. Thank you for joining me this morning. How are you today?
Well, thank you again so much for having me. I feel humbled that you would ask me to be on your show.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying yes. And I just got done with the introduction, so everybody kind of started to get to knowing everybody. But it's so great to kind of reconnect with an old friend and an old colleague. So had a lot of time working together, and I'm sure we'll touch on some of that during the conversation. But I'm
Sure.
real grateful to see you, and I'm real glad that you said yes to join me on the show. So thank you for being here. So, let's jump into your life. That's kind of how we do it on the show here. We get to know about the guests before we transition into some of the, great work that we're going to learn about from you as well. So tell me, Melissa, tell me a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up and what's your story?
So I actually grew up in Lubbock, Texas, and just something that's very valuable in my life was I truly grew up in La Mesa, Texas, with my grandparents on a cotton farm.
Oh, wow.
So one of my fondest memories was riding in a tractor with my grandfather, plowing the cotton fields. So,
nice.
Yeah, and that'll play into, my college degree and where I went later on in life. But
sure. And in Lubbock area, that like horizons forever, right there. You just see all day.
Trees.
It's just you're out there on the plains.
Bushes, sandstorms. Yeah. So then when I started school, I moved to Lubbock, and my mom, she's a single mom, mother of five. So she truly taught me the value of hard work. She always had like two jobs going on.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
so uh,
And where are you in the five
I'm the
order?
youngest.
You're the youngest of the
Yeah.
five. Yeah.
If, if you ask my older siblings, I'm probably the bossiest and try to take control. So,
Yeah. Nice.
but
Well,
I had an aunt and uncle that went to Texas Tech University, and so she would always pull me in starting when I was like in junior high to go start doing STEM programs at Texas Tech.
yeah.
So that was super beneficial to me. I knew at an early age that math and science were like my go-to subjects.
Yeah, and STEM, I'm sure most people know that by now, but it's science, technology, engineering, math. That's kind of
Yeah.
making sure folks understand that. But that's for kids getting exposure to those types
Yeah,
of educational opportunities and career opportunities. So
you know.
that makes a lot of sense. And
Yeah,
you eventually go in the career that you went on.
exactly. Yeah, and she's been a mentor my entire life. They both have.
Yeah,
But she's a chemical engineer, and so going into high school, continue to excel at math and science. I had a calculus teacher that was just super motivational and continued to encourage me, like, you're really good at this. You need to go into something related to math, like science and
yeah,
engineering.
yeah.
And so she pulled me into um, the decathlon team at the
Nice.
school. So that was really good because decathlon teams is a spread of it's math, it's science, it's oral, it's art, it's just a slew of subjects that you have to be well knowledged in when you go to
Yeah,
competition.
yeah. That's
Um,
fantastic. So statewide stuff, is that did you get a chance to travel a little bit doing that as well from the Lubbock area?
yeah, usually just like state competitions would be the
Yeah,
only thing. Yeah.
yeah,
But it was really good. I went to Lubbock High, which was known as a magnet school. It had AP courses and honors classes, and so um, definitely was able to take advantage of the AP courses and get college credits before going into college. So that was
yeah.
really nice.
Now,
Uh,
having grown up on the farm, and did you already have an interest in nature and outdoors and things like that as you're also learning that you're super talented in math and science? Is this already starting to come together for you in these teenage years?
So it
Is
wasn't at the time. It
Yeah,
wasn't until later in life when I was reflecting on my past and childhood, and I was like, wow, growing up on the farm and just learning the process of, what my grandfather had to go through. They had goats, they had hogs, they had chickens, just self-sustaining there on a farm.
yeah,
But then also, I mentioned my aunt and uncle, they would do a lot of trips and they would actually my mom was single and she didn't have the means to be able to take trips,
sure,
summer trips, and so I would join them and they would come to Colorado. And so just I realized my love of nature then, like just being able to hike in these tall pine trees
yeah,
and along the creeks, and just my love for nature really started there and was rooted there. And it's crazy because later on in life when I'm meeting Vernon and I'm dating Vernon, I'm sending him postcards of from Colorado, like, we need to move out here when we get married. And yeah, so it was funny because we didn't even find those postcards until we were moving from San Antonio, packing everything up to come to Colorado.
full
So it's
circle.
just, yeah,
Yeah,
it's just so surreal.
that's great. Thank you for sharing that with me. That's a really that is wonderful how life can work out that way. That
Yeah,
things that really are meaningful to you in your younger life, you can find your way back to later in life. So that's
yeah.
wonderful. Yeah. So you're in Lubbock and you're doing great in STEM and decathlon and any anything else that in your preteen teenage years? Are you active in sports or anything else that is
So,
kind of helping to shape your life?
yeah. So I did run cross country,
Oh wow, yeah,
and I will say that definitely helped me with my endurance,
sure,
just in life in
sure,
general.
yeah,
Just from a spiritual perspective, from a mental perspective,
yeah.
and from a physical perspective.
Just being able to
So,
keep going, yeah.
yeah, yeah, like, you know, rely on the Lord for my strength and just keep that endurance going.
Push through and keeping one foot going in front
Yeah.
of the next. Yeah.
And then the other thing that I did was I actually did heavy lifting competitions.
No kidding.
So,
In high
yeah, so
school.
I did go to state for
Yeah.
that.
Right
And
on.
yeah, so squatting and bench pressing and deadlifts. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that kind of kept me, throughout my life, just making sure that I was physical
Yeah.
and
Physically,
active.
mentally fit. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wow. That's fantastic. So, so you ended up. I know from our time together at the San Antonio River Authority. I know you are an Aggie.
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
So yeah, all my tech family, yeah, I was about last sheep of the family, and I was like, I'm not staying in Lubbock. Like, this is too flat. There's no trees.
Yeah.
See, you're eating dirt every day. The can stores.
My wife grew
So,
up in Lubbock too, so I'm
that's right.
sure she would agree with all of that.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm 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 gonna try to go as far as possible from Lubbock within the
Yeah,
state.
yeah.
Yeah. And I had gotten some scholarships, and I actually was supposed to go to Rice University,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and later on, probably like 3 months after I had gotten, like, I was completing paperwork to go to Rice, I got an acceptance letter from A&M, and they were offering me, pretty much a full scholarship. And so
right
when I
on.
made the financial comparisons, like, Rice had a really nice scholarship, but I would still end up having to pay
Yeah,
a good
it's
chunk of it. And it
private
was
school.
like,
Yeah,
uh, I think I'll go to A&M.
yeah, that's
So
a good choice. Yeah,
yeah,
and it's not like A&M is a slouchy academic
oh
school.
no, 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 no.
Yeah, not at all. I mean that's
Yeah,
in the career that you went into. It's
for
really what it's
sure.
known for. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So by the time I made that decision, I couldn't get into the dorms. So I was like one of the
Oh
few
no.
freshmen that had to live off campus, and so I had others, within my high school that were also going to A&M. There was several people that went to A&M.
Yeah.
And so I had a couple that had gotten, like, they got married out of high school and were going to A&M. And they were like, well, we have a 2-bedroom apartment. And I was like, okay, I can bunk up with you for a year at least,
Yeah.
until I find a roommate. And so ended up living off campus my first year, which, again, is rare because most of the time they encourage freshmen to live on campus.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, it worked out really well. Like, things just went really well. And like I said, I started out chemical engineering because, I had a great mentor. My aunt was a chemical engineer.
Yeah.
And did I did 2 internships my freshman and my sophomore year at a chemical plant in Odessa, Texas.
Oh,
And they were making polymers. And so, did a lot of the chemical engineering work and process flows.
yeah.
But then as an intern, I got to go work with the environmental engineers, and I saw, like, just the work that they were doing with, remediation and
Yeah.
protection of the natural resources. And they were out in the field pretty much the majority of the day. I was like, oh, no, I think I like what they're doing. I
Yeah.
think I want to change my major to environmental engineering.
That
So
makes sense. Yeah.
yeah. So went back to A&M. I think started my junior year, and by this time I was already taking PChem, so it's
Yeah.
like far along, in my
Yeah.
chemistry. Um, and I decided, I want to change to environmental engineering. Well, unfortunately at A&M at that time they didn't have an environmental engineering program. Tech had one, and I think UT had one, but I was just like, no, I want to stay here at A&M. So I coordinated with my advisors, and they were like, the thing that aligns the most with environmental engineering is agricultural engineering.
Sure.
So
That makes sense. And for
switched
Texas A&M,
majors.
that also makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So I switched majors, went to agricultural engineering. A lot of my basics transferred, so that was good. But since I had been so focused on chemistries, I had to take like a biology class.
Yeah.
And so so that, and I loved biology growing up, so I was like, okay, that's fine, I'll do that.
Yeah.
But even my advisors within the agricultural engineering program, they were like, okay, well, if you truly want to do environmental, like you need to take these options from the civil engineering department. So, those programs are focused more on water and wastewater,
Sure.
and so that I could get the full concept of water resources and water resource engineering. And so, yeah, that's how I ended up with an agricultural engineering degree. And
Yeah.
and I think it's been great. Like it brought me back to the love of the rivers, our water, protecting our natural resources for sure.
Yeah. So all these years that I've known you, I didn't realize there's a similarity in our undergrad journeys. I started out in chemistry as well, and it was my junior year, my sophomore year going into my junior year, that I kind of switched to environmental science. Where I was going to undergrad had just started an environmental science degree. I think I was the second person to graduate with that degree from the school. But yeah, had that kind of eye-opening thought of I don't know that I want to be inside a building
Yeah, all
my whole
day
life. In that
running computer models and
yeah, the
workflows.
the
Yeah.
environmental science people get to go out and do stuff outside, and that sounds way more appealing. And yeah, it triggered my thought when you said PChem. I all I needed to take was PChem, and I would have
Uh,
graduated with a dual degree. I just didn't. I just decided not to take the PChem class to get 2 degrees, because I was like, I know I'm not going to go down the road of chemistry, so why spend the money and time doing the PChem class? But that triggered a thought. Wow, PChem, I could have had two degrees. But I'm so glad I did the similar, mid course change like you did, and went in the environmental direction. I appreciate that connection to your story.
yeah.
So what, getting into the world of water then, and civil engineering and those types of things, did you do other internships, or how did you continue to kind of grow into that area now that you made that switch in your college years?
So, I didn't do additional internships after that. Um, I had a lot of extracurricular activities at A&M that I was doing, and that kept me busy, but
Yeah.
it was
Were you in the
enjoyable.
Corps?
No,
Okay.
but I was on the A&M Ballet Folklorico
Oh,
dance
right on.
group, and so
Yeah.
so that was really fun. And then
Sure.
I just did a lot with like the multicultural department and trying to bring in freshmen and
Nice.
help them along their journey, and just
Yeah.
sharing my story of statistics that were against me, and not falling into play for the statistics that the world puts on you, but
Yeah. Right on.
you focusing on what's your journey,
Yeah.
and what's the plan that you see yourself in, and moving forward in that. So
Yeah. Right
I
on.
got on, it was a program called Excel, and so we did a lot of like freshman orientations, and would work with more of the minority students that were coming in.
Yeah. That's great.
um so yeah, and then you know by the end of my junior year, or no, by the beginning of my junior year, is when I met Vernon.
Yeah.
So so
Good
also had
man. Good. Tell him I said hi, by the way.
that. I will.
Yeah.
But
So,
no, so I didn't do any more internships, but I certainly got a lot of good advice from like my advisors on my future steps once I graduated. And a lot of that was going into construction
okay.
immediately, so that you could truly be a good designer.
Yeah.
And
Start
develop.
getting real world practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Vernon and I got married while we were at A&M, and he graduated a semester before me and moved up to Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
And so when I graduated, moved up there and worked for Kiewit Construction.
Okay. And what were you doing there?
I was a subcontract engineer, and so I was actually working out in the field. We were putting in a fiber optic line from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, yeah, on a daily basis, just working with the subcontractors as they were plowing or trenching or boring the fiber optic lines as we continue to move up to
Yeah.
Seattle, Washington.
Nice.
And so, again, that, just that advice from my mentors at A&M was super beneficial, because there were instances where, like, we hit a major water line and had to figure out how to handle that. We, ran across like a heritage tree and had to figure out how to redesign it, because we
Yeah.
had the railroad, next to
Your
the
confine. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So just trying to figure out how to maneuver around that. So just understanding the obstacles that you would run into the field, and brainstorming, like, okay, well, how do we reroute this line, and how do we get past this obstacle?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was really beneficial.
Real world experience. Sounds like a wonderful experience right out of college to get that hands-on type of work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So did you stay at that corporation the whole time that you were in the Northwest, or?
I did. Yeah. I worked for Kiewit the whole time. Again, the main project was putting in the fiber optic line from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington. So I saw that entire project through.
Yeah. Okay.
There was a point where we were primarily in Washington working the entire time trying to get it to Seattle. So I actually got an apartment in Tacoma, Washington.
Sure. Kind of that midpoint there between the two. Yeah.
Yeah. To minimize the travel. And then I would just go home on the weekends and ride the Amtrak. I loved the Amtrak. It was so cool.
Yeah.
But
I haven't done that yet. It's on our to-do list now that we're up here. Yeah.
It goes along the coast, so it's super nice.
Yeah, we want to take it up into Canada as well. So we just gotta do it one of these days.
Really nice. Yeah.
Right on.
It's in your own backyard.
Yep.
But the thing that I didn't care for in the Northwest there was just the dreariness to me. It rained like every single day. And
yeah, I'm actually all right with that. Yeah, we were when we were moving here a few years ago, people in San Antonio are like, oh, it's going to be raining all the time and everything. And, rain in San Antonio, it's like dangerous. It's like storms that could be flash floody and really harmful. Here, it's just like
a drizzle.
It's just a mist. Like, put a hoodie on and go outside. So, I it's a trade-off that we get all the lovely giant trees and forests that, I'd live 200 days out of the year or more in the rain, and that's all right.
I didn't realize that San Antonio and like Seattle area get the same amount of rain.
Yeah, I think sometimes San Antonio actually gets more annual rain. It just comes in buckets a few times a year, whereas here it just drizzles all the time. But those are some of those weird things you don't really equate. A semi-arid San Antonio having a similar amount of rainfall as the lush, Pacific Northwest. Yeah. So how long did you stay then in, that Portland Northwest area, you and Vernon, before you wound up, I think heading back to Texas is where
we did. It was probably about a year. Vernon was probably there a year and a half.
Yeah.
But, once we completed the project, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. Like, I need sun.
Get to the sun, sure. Yeah.
And so we moved back to Texas, and we ended up in Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
And
what'd you end up doing there? What was kind of the next step of your career?
So there, I worked for a private consulting firm. It was a small Booker Willis and Ratliff Engineering. It was a super small office, probably had about 30 people there.
Yeah.
But they did water and wastewater.
Okay.
and transportation and airport. And so I was one of the few that knew AutoCAD at the time and MicroStation. And so my thought was that I was going to go into like water, wastewater, because that was my, background.
Yeah.
And that's what I knew. And then they put me on the airport engineering team. So I was like, oh, okay. So I just went with it. Like,
Sure.
yeah. So primary focus was designing, rehabilitating airports in Texas.
Yeah.
And that was super cool just because it taught me a lot of the basic principles, especially when I went to take like my engineering exam.
Yeah.
Like several of the principles on there were on the exam.
Right on.
But the good thing, like I said, I knew both softwares. And so from the water wastewater side, they used MicroStation. So I got pulled into some of the community projects of designing water and wastewater lines. And then I got pulled into some of the transportation and bridge projects.
Okay.
And, that was being a small office, you get pulled into everything. So the good thing about the small office is like your experience just grows.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and I was also the only one in the office that was bilingual.
Okay.
And
That's a
so
benefit. Absolutely.
it was a benefit, yeah. So from the bridge perspective, I would actually go to California, to Mexico, where they would um, create or, build the bridge forms. And I would go do the inspections.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
because a lot of the plants that were building the forms just spoke Spanish.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so it was a good opportunity to be able to travel and
Nice.
see the plants, but then also see the city, at night and stuff.
Yeah.
So
So we're again, just kind of another maybe brief connection in our past as well. I worked for food grow engineering for a while in my career, and not doing the engineering stuff. Obviously, that's not my background. But I was the construction materials tech. I would do a lot of the testing for the engineers to make sure that the concrete was meeting the PSI standards, or the soil was compacted appropriately or not. So when you're inspecting the bridge construction, the piers, were you doing the concrete as well, or just making sure
right.
it was
Yes.
designed as it was following the designs that you guys created, or a little bit of both? What were you doing there?
It was a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would go in and check like PSIs for sure and check the plant. Like there was like a checklist that I would go through, um, inspect the beams, like make sure, there weren't any fractures or
Sure.
anything that would uh, in the future provide an impact to the
Yeah.
bridge
Weak
being
point.
built with the
Yeah.
beams.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
fascinating.
just
Another.
making sure that it was structurally sound before it went into the project design.
Yeah. Yeah. Before it got
Constructed.
installed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. So how long then were you in the Dallas area?
So we were there, I get like 2.5 years,
Yeah.
and I actually did not care for Dallas. It was very fast paced.
Yeah.
Um, uh, yeah. At my drive, I was literally like maybe 5 miles from my work, and it would take me like an hour and a half
Yeah.
to get through traffic. And I was just like, this is insane. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't
Dallas
do
and
this every
Houston
day for
are.
the rest of my life.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're great cities, but I would be hard pressed to be in Dallas or Houston. They're. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel you.
And I also, we eventually lived in Rowlett, which is like a suburb of Dallas,
Yeah.
and there was a big lake there. But other than that, like it was difficult to find like the natural connections there.
Sure.
And so I told Vernon, I was like, we need to move to a place where, the river is the center of town, because that's what I loved about Portland. In Portland,
Yeah.
the river's the center of town. There's
Yeah.
always something going on the weekend.
Yeah.
Um, and plus, like when we had moved to Portland, like our apartment was right on one of the tributaries.
Nice.
and it was, and the golf course was there, and it was just like gorgeous. And
Yeah.
then, you have Mount Hood, Mount Rainier, and
Yep.
it's just like so much to do. And then an hour to the west is the beach.
Yep.
And yeah, so just being drawn to water again, and
Yeah.
nature. And I didn't find that in Dallas. It was very difficult. And so I was like, we need to move somewhere where the river is the center of town, and we can enjoy trails. And so my best friend was planning her wedding, and so I was making frequent trips to San Antonio because that's where she lived.
Yeah.
And you know, one morning I was looking at the paper, and I was like, San Antonio River Authority. I was like, huh, let me look at this. And so, I circled it, and I was like, can I have this paper and
Yeah.
get back with me? And called about it. And sure enough, got an interview. And they were looking at the time that the major project, I guess, that they wanted me to work on was the Goliad
Oh, yeah.
system.
Yeah.
And there,
Yeah.
I guess some highlights that were a benefit for me was, again, being bilingual
Yeah.
and working water wastewater systems.
Yeah. And for
And
those of us, I know what you meant by that, but for people who may not be familiar with, so the Goliad system that you're referencing is a water system down in the small rural city of Goliad, and some of the even smaller, even more rural communities around the little town of Goliad, Berkeley, and some other places, and these were very rural, very underserved areas that
so they were considered colonias.
Right.
And so with the colonias, it's like within 100 miles of the Mexican border, and the majority of them are just Spanish speaking.
Yeah.
And what I really loved about this project, like it really was, I saw it as, wow, like I'm truly making a difference in this project.
Yeah.
Because their water wells were pretty much underneath their septic systems. Their septic systems were bleeding through and contaminating their water wells. So
uranium, issues in the groundwater as well. So all kinds of.
It was an opportunity for us to come in and give them clean, safe, potable water.
Yeah.
And so we did that for La Bahia, which is a super historic town in Texas.
Yeah.
Fannin, Berkeley.
Yeah. All these it's where the, Texas independence started, for those who know Texas history, and everybody knows the Battle of the Alamo, but there were some very important, Texas independence issues happening down in that area as well. So yeah, very, very historic parts but also very underserved and very depressed socioeconomically as well. So the work that you did there is commendable. I mean, it's still providing people potable water today. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. So that's how we transitioned to San Antonio.
Yeah. So that's you were already there by the time I arrived at the San Antonio River Authority. So your career was already on the road there, and then I had a chance to join you and spend many years together there, and you were one of the people who helped educate me, which I'm going to ask you to help educate the audience now too on nature-based solutions and engineering with nature and those types of terms, and that type of work with stormwater systems and how do we restore creeks and rivers and all of that. I know you've left the San Antonio River Authority as well, not too long after I left a few years ago, and you're back in Colorado now. I want to, I guess, tell me a little bit about where you're working, because I want to be respectful for the company and that you're working with now, so that they get some kudos and tell us a little bit what you're doing now. But then we can hopefully transition into you helping educate everybody about the significance of nature-based engineering or nature-based solutions. These are terms that are sometimes intertwined, and I think the Corps of Engineers calls it engineering with nature. All these terms kind of mean similar things. But what are you doing now, and then maybe help transition us into telling us why this, working with nature is what it is and how we do it and why it's important.
Yeah. So I retired from the River Authority after 21 years and am now working with Respect Engineering. So yeah, I've been there. Last October was a year.
Yeah.
So that was really nice to meet that milestone.
Up in Colorado, where you
Up
kind of
in
come full
Colorado,
circle. Yeah.
full circle, yeah. So it's truly been a joy to be able to carry a lot of the concepts that I learned and did at the River Authority and continue to help some of the Colorado municipalities and districts here. Um, Very interesting. I'll get to a cool story um, later on about just the connection and being able to use some of the tools that we developed at the River Authority, here in Colorado.
Yeah.
But as far as, nature-based solutions so the other one is green infrastructure, like that's another one that's being tied to it.
Yeah.
But I think, San Antonio led the way with the Mission Reach project. Just using that as an example of what nature can do, not just for the environment, from replenishing the native species there, the aquatic species there, but also from a quality of life. Like,
Yeah.
we saw during COVID, like so many people enjoying the trails. Like there was an uptick in the number of use.
Giant uptick. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's so great to hear, like Sean's story about the mussels and not only that, like the avian species. When the last time I touched base with the team, they were up to like 219
Up to 219
species.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, which is crazy because like it was double digits before the restoration happened, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's it's so good to see that the transformation that can happen
Yeah.
with nature-based solutions. And for me, we're trying to carry that concept, into the other projects as we continue to work with the city and the county on, the Howard Peak trails as they continue to do them and connect, but just giving them that visualization of how our streams are just so important in
Yeah.
being mindful of what goes into them and what drains into them. And so, we try to incorporate it into the West Side Creeks projects, of course, San Pedro Creek.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just really good for the River Authority to be advocating for these things.
Yeah.
But not only that, nature-based solutions are an opportunity to really highlight like the multi-beneficial components that can be tied into it. One of the projects that the River Authority worked on during the bond process was looking at all the bond projects and identifying, trying to break silos between departments, because
Sure.
transportation will have one project going on, parks will have one project going on, stormwater will have another one, but just bringing all the projects together, looking at them holistically, but then identifying, okay, let's add all of these layers because we have so much data available to us. So looking at traffic incidents and like death rates from
Yeah.
bicyclists or pedestrians, looking at environmental equity, looking at social vulnerability, looking at the urban heat island. And then the River Authority itself also had water quality, flooding.
Right.
So there were so many things that we could layer on and identify, like, oh, wow, this is a good project to focus on and identify. Let's put in some bump outs here because there's so many traffic accidents here in this location. We need to slow the traffic down, but we can
right.
double it because the urban heat island index is so high in this area. Let's plant some vegetation. Let's, make a tree lined street. Let's, continue add components of green infrastructure and nature-based solutions that will address all of those issues that the city is seeing.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it gets engineer valued out because it's too expensive.
Yeah.
And so, we were able to break it out by price. Like, this is the cost of trees, and this is the number of trees that we recommend, but here's the cost of trees. So if you want to take a couple out, you can see the benefits. And so for each component that we were recommending, putting a cost that's tied to it so that you don't just completely delete the BMPs, you scale it.
Right. And BMP for audiences, best management practice. Right.
Yeah.
So these ideas of how you can incorporate these multi-benefits.
Right. But the other side of that was, again, working across the departments. It's like, look, you're planning a transportation project here. You're planning a park project here. You're planning you need stormwater here. So why don't you pull your funds together?
Right.
To really move this forward, because there were several locations because of the Howard Peak trails that are being created. There's an opportunity to put, like, add sidewalks or bike lanes to be able to connect the trails. Like, there's an opportunity within less than a mile to connect the trails. And so just justifying that with the city and helping them in their bond projects and how they designed them and how they created them.
Yeah.
And so go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say, and I was, didn't want to jump in, but I almost couldn't help myself. What you're describing and what you and your team did and I think is the epitome of sustainability. I mean, we live in an interconnected world. Whether we think we do or not, we do. Everything is kind of interconnected, and I think 20th century engineering and pre-20th century engineering kind of looked at things siloed, like you said, a street project here, a bridge project there, a stormwater project there, a park over there, and everybody did their own thing, not really looking at how all of these projects can interplay, just the same that we don't always appreciate how nature is intertwined and interacts with each other. So, I mean, your team really did put together this, way of looking at projects that really emphasize the sustainability, not just putting in more trees and improving water quality through the different stormwater mechanisms that can be implemented, but integrating economics, integrating social and cultural, integrating environmental justice, as you were talking about, all of these areas, looking at housing and what areas didn't have historically were provided resources, all of these things integrating. It takes work, it takes effort, but that's the right way to do it. That's the way to get the best benefit for the most people, particularly when we're talking about limited public dollars. We can't.
Exactly.
So I was so impressive watching what you and your team were doing to integrate all of these different ideas and really demonstrating what sustainability should be across the board. It's how we should be doing things.
Right. And you brought up some good points, because several of the areas that we looked at, like, we looked at the social vulnerability. And so we identified, like, where a lot of the need were communities that they don't own cars. They walk, they bike, they go to the bus stops.
Right.
And so being able, and the urban heat island index is so high, like, San Antonio gets like over 100 degrees several days.
Yeah, for months, and getting worse now with climate change.
So it's just so brutal. Yeah. So being able to provide the shade to alleviate some of that from the community, look at the bus stops. And that was the other thing. Like, we were like, let's try to partner with VIA. Like, what can we do? Which was the transportation system in San Antonio.
Right.
But let's let's identify how we can all partner and work on this together to create those multi-benefit projects. And those, those green infrastructure or nature-based solutions were also an opportunity, like you said, to provide the water quality benefits because the streams are so close. Like there's so many streams throughout San Antonio.
Right.
And we saw several times where just a short rainfall event in the afternoon would flush into the rivers, and then you'd have fish kill because
Right.
the temperatures were so high because the amount of imperviousness there, and would cause the streams temperatures to just increase
Yeah.
and
To
cause a
reduce
fish
the
kill.
dissolved
Yeah.
oxygen,
Right.
flush in bacteria and other, that might not be harmful to the fish, but makes it,
Yeah.
super not good for human interaction with the
Right.
water. So yeah, all of these things again interacting and they're all connected. So we
Yeah.
have to look at these things as connected
Right.
systems because they are.
And then the other big component from the San Antonio perspective, and I know several communities just because, I you and I are both on the National Association of Storm Water and Flood Management Agencies. There's so many communities that I hear have issues with localized flooding, and that's
Right.
not something FEMA funds, or that's not something FEMA
Right.
um, develops standards for. So addressing those localized flooding events, like these nature-based solutions and green infrastructure can help address and alleviate some of those areas. And as a team, we understood like you can't incorporate nature-based solutions and you can't incorporate green infrastructure everywhere.
Sure.
There's a place for it. I know I was working with the director of transportation, um, and she's no longer there, but she was very instrumental when I was talking to her about, green infrastructure, nature-based solutions, and like, let's work on these corridors. And she's like, Melissa, you can't do it on this corridor because it's a major highway and we need this for transportation. There's no room for bike lanes. That would be dangerous. And,
Right.
she really laid it out to me. And that was like so beneficial because I was like, huh, I didn't think about that. My mind was straight like, let's do nature-based solutions
Sure.
everywhere. And
Sure.
so it was an opportunity to learn like there's a place for it. Um, but really working with the community and identifying where are the appropriate locations. And so definitely looking at the bond projects was an opportunity to work with the teams and see like, oh, this would be a great spot because it's not a major thoroughfare, and it could link
Right.
the trails. And we're seeing bicyclists injured at this location. And
Right. Right.
just again, the multi benefits. And the other difficult part of really advocating for nature-based solutions is that when you come to developing your benefit cost ratio to move
Mm-hmm.
forward with a project, sometimes it doesn't equate to that, to one, to move it forward.
Right.
And so that's something as part of the NOSMA group that we're working with to really encourage FEMA, the Corps, and EPA to look at the quality of life benefits.
Right. How do you account for some of these things that aren't just construction costs, but the
Right.
benefits that
Yeah.
if someone's living now by a multi-benefit project and they have a trail access, is their health improving? Or, is their diabetes rates might drop because people can be more active? How do we account for those things when scoring projects? Because it's not just what does it cost to plan it and build it. It's what are the benefits that you get, lifetime of that project. And it's not certainly something that's happening yet, and it does make these projects sometimes appear to be more expensive, but we're not capturing adequately all the benefits of what the costs are for not doing these things either. So
Right.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let me I'm going to maybe set you up for a question here, because I want to make sure that everybody watching this or listens to this really can start to understand what nature-based solutions are, green infrastructure are. And so I imagine most folks are familiar with the Los Angeles River. Even if you didn't know the Los Angeles River, if you've seen Terminator 2 and the big chase scene through a big, concrete drainage ditch, that's the Los Angeles River. Going, back to, the, Grease movie, the musical, the drag race in this big concrete drainage ditch. That's the Los Angeles River. And that is, engineering that works, 20th century engineering that took a natural river, straightened it, hard surfaced it, primarily, not the entire length, but most of that, 40-ish mile river in Los Angeles is now a concrete channel. It does what it was designed to do. It moves floodwaters through the city rapidly, and allowed for economic development to occur in areas that used to flood. So that engineering had value, but it also essentially destroyed the natural ecosystem in its process. And that is an example that I think a lot of people can understand and see that and not realize that's a river. They just think that's a drainage ditch, because that's essentially what it became. So that's kind of the older way of engineering, the old way of thinking civil engineering and again, it worked and there's value to it. Nature-based solutions, green infrastructure, that help the audience understand what we're now looking at is still trying to maintain, in this case, flood mitigation, a flood benefit that provides economic development benefit for the community, but we're doing it working with nature as opposed to fighting nature. So help explain better than I am, what does that mean? Like, what is that, to an average citizen who hears the term nature-based solutions or green infrastructure? What are some examples that you can describe that people can understand that difference between the old way of just putting up a concrete ditch versus this new way? What is this newer way of working with nature as opposed to fighting it?
So it's really looking from a stream perspective, making sure that you're keeping those meanders, and you can look at historical maps to see what the meandering system was. And that's one thing that we did with the San Antonio River for the Mission Reach, was look like where were the previous meanders, and identifying opportunities where you can use natural improvements in the area. For example, for bank stabilization, like we would use root wads and we would jam them into the side of the banks to provide that bank stabilization. It provided fish habitat. It provided an opportunity for not only the bank to be stabilized, but also for aquatic species to have, some kind of protection from predators. And also just identifying like where your streams are flowing and what are some of the other improvements that you can make in that area. From an engineering perspective, I know in some areas we use cross veins, we use J hooks, and those were, placing a little bit more hardened infrastructure to direct the water to be able to continue to flow and not jam into the side of the bank to erode it even further.
Right.
So looking for opportunities like that, we also used embayments. Those are very similar to like wetland features.
They're incredibly important for habitat.
Exactly.
Right. Right.
Opportunities for an area for waters to pool, and also looking at the entire length of the river. Are you providing runs? Are you providing riffles? Are you providing pools? To make sure that the stream is healthy.
Sure. And for those who, again, might not be as familiar with stream terminology, a run is a type of a section of river where it's relatively straight, relatively, same velocity, relatively similar depth. A riffle is where it gets a little shallower and the water speeds up. Going over rapids, kind of, is what a riffle is, and then a pool is obviously an area where the water slows down and gets a little bit deeper. So that I captured that correctly for the audience, and all three of those types of habitat features are important for aquatic systems to have a healthy balance, because some creatures need the riffle and some creature needs the pool. So having that is important for aquatic health, and just having a river system that serves more of a purpose than just what us humans need it to serve. So did I capture all that correctly?
You did. Yeah.
Okay. You taught me, so.
And I will say, even within the river stream, like over the years, we identified that there was areas where we did have to hardscape some banks in order to stabilize them. Like we had to, at some of the confluences, the waters were just so strong that we had to put like
Sure.
Beams or a steel wall to help stabilize the bank and then pretty it up on the upside. But for the most part, the majority of the mission reach is very nature based, and it's been working great. Like it's been there, since 2012.
Yeah,
So
yeah. We
almost
had the
12
grand
years.
opening in 2013.
Yeah.
This was the final kind of, so yeah, 12, 13 years
And to
now.
say that confluence is the only way it is the only place where we've had to put in a hard structure,
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
yeah. And I think that's also a great example, though, too, of again balancing how do we do these projects, particularly in urban areas, like you used the transportation example. Full on green infrastructure solutions or nature based solutions might not work everywhere in a particular urban area. So you do have to make those choices and those decisions about where you might have to use an older traditional hardened surface, because we still want to protect the residents that live near the river and the houses and the infrastructure and all the other things. So we can't let necessarily the river do exactly what it wants to do. But the idea behind what the work is that you're doing is how do you allow these natural systems to function as natural as possible, with where the engineering is more, as you said, redirecting maybe, or working with, as opposed to just eliminating nature. So but there are
And
places that it just doesn't
I,
work.
I will say that even with nature-based solutions, when you think about it, you may have to do improvements along the way, but or every few years. But when you think about hardscape trapezoidal concrete channels, if those fail, like the amount to improve those areas is so much higher. So when you look at the benefits of long-term operations and maintenance, that's where you truly see the benefits also.
Right.
I mean, truly from a long-term benefit, quality of life is huge.
Ecosystem health and all of
Yeah,
that,
but when
right?
you're looking at dollars, even the long-term
Yeah.
benefits from a cost perspective, it's so much more economical to work in a nature-based solution versus hardened concrete
Yeah.
gray infrastructure.
With
Now, when we look at more of the community green infrastructure and nature-based solutions, that's where you're seeing when development comes in, having them put in rain gardens or bioswales, or sometimes they use sand filters, but to me, that's you want to do something that's front and center, that you continue to operate and maintain, not something that's in the backyard that's forgotten for a
right.
long time. Bioswales, And so things like that are something that provides an uplift just because it's like a vegetated area, a landscaped area. Like it looks good.
Yeah.
And it also provides those multiple benefits of improving the water quality, allowing the parking lots to run into those areas. So, today we see so many businesses coming in and their parking lots are just so huge. So you just see a huge area of gray infrastructure.
Yeah.
To be able to break that up where you'd have, pervious pavement or a bioswale or something between the parking spots is huge because it's providing additional benefits.
Right. Well,
And
I
it
think
looks,
that's a great point that you're making, Melissa, too, that this idea of using green infrastructure or nature-based solutions, it's not against development, right? It's this, there's for so many years and probably still today in many places, there's this false argument of we can't have economic development and growth and building housing and businesses and everything in nature. It's got to be one or the other. And that's a false argument. That's not at all what your work is proving. Your work is proving, no, we want to support development. Of course we need economic development. We need places for people to live and businesses and for places for people to work, and communities, cities need that. So it's not this, either or argument anymore. It's how do we develop better in a way that we can have the business that has the parking lot, but it's done in a way that is actually also not as harmful, that it can be more even helpful for nature, providing habitat for birds and other things, gathering the water, helping water quality. So it's minimizing this old, outdated fight that developers, I think, used to use often in their arguments for not wanting to put in trees or not following these things, is because it's going to make it more expensive, and it's either or, and it's not that way. It doesn't have to be that way anyway.
yeah. And I think also, from a city's perspective, like looking for the opportunities to where they can also implement green infrastructure. So
Right.
again, not just on developers, but from a city
Yeah, on
perspective.
public
Yeah,
lands as well, cities and counties
right.
as well. Absolutely.
Um, Making sure if you're reconstructing an entire roadway and you're increasing um, the width of the roads or the width of the sidewalks, there's an opportunity to maintain the lanes a certain width. But also, like, if you have medians, like, why are they concrete medians? Like, why can't we do vegetated medians that also provide stormwater benefit and have the roads drain into those locations? And then if you think about, again, from a community that you want to be walkable, bikeable, then let's provide some protection for them. Maybe that's the area where you put in the green
Yeah.
infrastructure
Yeah.
and line the streets with trees or allow for pedestrians and bicyclists to be separated from that traffic.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I know we're coming up on an hour. I could keep talking about this all day because I think
Well,
it's
I
so.
I did want to
Yeah,
mention
please.
something if I can.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's so great that I got to work on that project, the bond project, before I left, because I will tell you now, I'm working with the city of Denver
Yeah.
on one of their MS4 projects, and
Hmm.
they're now requiring their transportation team
And that's a
to
federal kind of stormwater, water quality type of issue, MS4. That just so again for
right.
people to understand, that's a kind of a federal Clean Water Act responsibility that cities have to do. So
Correct.
go on. So I didn't want to interrupt, but I want to make sure people understood what you meant. So
And so it's so exciting because I'm working with them and I'm actually doing, like, implementing this tool. So we've created a tool at Respec, and it incorporates like all those things that we listed for the San Antonio. We did the same thing for them. We're looking at the entire city. We're identifying transportation projects. We're looking at streetscapes where they can implement a rain garden or a bioswale, looking at areas where they can implement pervious pavement, looking at their bike lanes. So again, working across departments and pulling in
Perfect.
their bike department, their parks department, their transportation department. So it's worked out really well, and it's so exciting to be able to use this tool and see them implementing it also. And when we show them, it's almost done, and so we show them the tool, and they're just like super excited. We show them renderings of what it could look like, and so yeah, it's super exciting to be able to see, the work that I did at the River Authority is now, I'm using it at Respect,
Spreading
and I'm
around,
being
yeah.
able to use
We
it with communities too.
Well,
So
and hopefully from this, the other people will want it in their communities as well. I mean, that's what we need to do is spread the
yeah,
word about there's a better way of doing things. And I'm so grateful to know you and know the amazing work that you're doing to make the world a better place. And you're having an impact on communities that are, it's gonna long outlive you. The benefits that you're making for the world is gonna, generations to come will be seeing and experiencing what you're doing now for them. So thank you for
do.
all of that great work that you're doing, and helping today help educate people on this important work. So what now? I want to give you a call to action. Now that people have heard all this and they want it in their communities, or they want to know more or do more, what can people do? What do you want people to do after listening to this or watching this show?
It would be important for people to be mindful of, our natural resources, but particularly with water. It's we have this concept that we're pushing. It's one water. You have your storm, it provides your water, your drinking water, but not only that, your waste goes to a wastewater treatment plant and gets treated, but a lot of the times it can be recycled, it can be, discharged, cleaned up and discharged back into our streams.
Yeah.
So not just think about it of I turn on the tap and I have my water. No, like think about um where your water goes and the benefits of being able to have that water and being mindful of. I know when I lived in San Antonio, I had a rain garden in my backyard. Like you yourself can implement these types of things. So
Yeah.
be a steward of our natural resources and make sure that you're taking care of them, but you're also mindful of not being wasteful of these things. Like really learn to appreciate that we only have one water.
Yep. Couldn't be more in support of that. And every, every little rain garden in everybody's backyard, or every small project here or there, then also start to have a cumulative effect in communities as well. That these small individual acts can then grow to be, beneficial for a whole area. So fantastic. So hope, we always end every show talking a little bit about hope. And hope is not just a fuzzy emotion. It's actually not defined by those who study it. It's not even actually defined as an emotion. It's defined as this idea that you can have a vision for a better future. You can identify some steps that you can take to get to that better future, and you feel you have a sense of self-agency, that there are things you can do to get to this better future. So we talk about hard things and, climate change and climate crisis. And, we're recording this right now. Even though this is going to be airing in February, there's, horrible wildfire fires going on in Los Angeles right now. So, I mean, there's a lot to be concerned about in our world, but hope is a tool that we can motivate ourselves and inspire others to action. So, we want to talk to you. Going to ask you 3 questions about hope, and just kind of give your first response. Don't think too long about the answer. So, so the first question, Melissa, is: what is your vision for a better future? It can be for you personally, professionally, or for the world. What's your vision for a better future?
So, to me, hope is a confident expectation. I mean, you look at it from a biblical perspective, it's a confident expectation. And I think for a better future, it would be having people come together with the spirit of unity and not division, to be able to speak with compassion and understanding, and to see others how God sees them. And sometimes that can be truly difficult, but really loving one another and showing that compassion and understanding, but trying to come together more, working together, collaborating together, because there's so much more we can do together.
Yeah. So expand on that and tell me why. Tell me why this is important that we come together.
To me, it's important because when you think about from, and again, I'm going to go like biblical perspective.
Please, yeah.
I love just the spirit in me.
Yeah.
When you look back in biblical times, like successfulness meant that you were able to help your neighbor, to lift each other up. And today we've become so involved with materialistic things, and it's me, me, me. And so, I think it's just important that we come together, because as a community, there's so much more that we can do. It's thinking about an initiative and moving it forward. It's not about how can I prosper in this time? How can I get more? It's how can we as an entire nation continue to move forward on specific concepts, like not being like, I'm not against you, I'm for you. Let's learn to be for each other and lift each other up. And I think that's just so beautiful to be able to see when people do come together and are able to move forward. You mentioned the wildfires in California, like that's so heartbreaking. But then you think about, the Bible tells us there will be rivers in the deserts, and you see what's going on in the Middle East, and it's just like, wow, like there's truly rivers being created in the middle of the desert. And so it's just mind-blowing how things can continue to move forward if we come together and we're moving forward in unity and not having discord amongst each other and trying to cut each other down. And yeah.
So the last question, I love all of that. Last question for you. Imagine, Melissa, that we are in that future and we are coming together. We have come together. We do, while we might, still have disagreements, but we work together in a more unifying way, and the world is that vision that you just described. How does that make you feel, knowing that that's how we're living now?
I think peace, at peace.
Yeah.
And just encouraged. Yeah, just you wouldn't be struggling with like what's coming next, or what's the next battle I have to fight. It's more of peacefulness and encouragement to know that we can continue to trust one another and build each other up.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, Melissa, thank you so much for your time today and your expertise and your compassion and love for your community and for your world. I've always appreciated our conversations over the years, and I very much appreciate this one as well. So I wish you and your family all the best, and I'm sure I'll see you at future conferences and whatnot. But thank you so much for joining me today on Stories Sustain Us and sharing your personal story and helping to raise awareness about the significance of nature-based solutions and green infrastructure. So thank you for being here.
Thank you again, Stephen.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that wraps up another inspiring episode of Stories Sustain Us. Today we had the privilege of hearing Melissa Bryant's incredible journey, from growing up on a cotton farm to becoming a leader in water resource management and a passionate advocate for nature-based solutions. Melissa shared her insights on integrating social justice into the environmental planning process, the economic and ecological benefits of green infrastructure, and the importance of collaboration and community engagement to drive meaningful change. Personally, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to utilize nature-based solutions whenever possible. These solutions not only help address challenges like flooding and water quality, but also foster healthier, more resilient ecosystems and communities. Melissa's work reminds us that advancing sustainability requires both innovative approaches and a deep commitment to making a difference. I want to thank Melissa for being on the show today and for everything she does to protect our natural resources and support underserved communities. Her dedication and expertise are truly inspiring, and I'm so grateful for my friendship with her and for the time that she shared with us today. To you, the audience, I hope Melissa's story has inspired you to take action in your own community. Whether it's supporting a local green initiative, advocating for better water resources, or simply sharing these stories of hope and resilience, every effort matters. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, please share it with your family and friends, like and follow the podcast, and leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this subject. Your support helps me continue to shine a light on the incredible individuals working to create a more sustainable world for all. And don't forget to join me next week for the next episode of Stories Sustain Us, which is going to be released on February 18th. On that episode, we'll be heading back to Scotland to explore some globally recognized efforts to restore, protect, and preserve the River Tweed catchment. It's a story you won't want to miss. So again, you can catch the next episode of Stories Sustain Us on February 18th at storiessustainus.com, wherever you listen to podcasts, and on YouTube. So thanks for joining me today, and I hope to see you next week. Until next time, I'm Stephen Shower. Please take care of yourself and each other. Take care.